Hello and welcome, I'm ELD, and these are all of the gold cards from Strixhaven. Starting out with Aether Helix, we've got 3, a green and a blue. Return target permanent to its owner's hand, and then you can return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So a unsummon or a boomerang plus a recollect. It's not quite regrowth, it's only going to be a permanent card, but that is at sorcery speed. I mean, this is a little bit of a swing. Probably not the most exciting card. You're likely to play it if you're in those colors. And we're going to notice a lot of these cards, the 2-color cards, I mean, they're typically a higher power level than the mono-colored cards because it is not the easiest thing to get the mana you need in Limited. Therefore, if you are in the color pair, there's a pretty high chance you're going to end up playing a lot of these cards, would be my prediction in the dark without actually looking at them. And here we've got a Elder Dragon. I'm just gonna, I guess, call them the Ravnica Guilds. I don't know. I don't know the new names yet. I mean, they worked so hard to get us to say Izzet and Golgari, and now they're throwing new ones out there. But Beledros Witherbloom, he's an Elder Dragon. There's a whole cycle of Elder Dragons. This guy has flying, and he's a 4/4 for 7. At the beginning of each upkeep, you get that pest creature, and you can pay 10 life to untap all lands you control, but you can only activate that once each turn. That's a really powerful effect. Expect commander players to be very amped up to be able to use that. They've got more life to pay, and these pests... at the beginning of each upkeep, I mean, this is basically a Verdant Force slightly better. So the 1/1s are actually pests that when they die, you gain a life. And in multiplayer, I mean, that's every player's upkeep. So that gets out of hand pretty fast. But everything about this is awesome except the mana cost. 7 does line up with that original Verdant Force. But remember, that guy was a 7/7. So the fact that this is a 4/4 feels a little bit bad. Just to have that huge investment, but you know, even if they don't answer it on your turn, you're already getting value. Just they're getting a 1/1. You just pay an awful lot for it. But yeah, I mean, you're totally going to play this if you're in black green. Biomathematician, 3 mana spell here, and when it enters the battlefield, you get a 0/0 green fractal. And you put a +1/+1 counter on it for each fractal you control. That can get out of hand pretty fast if you have a lot of fractals. Especially if you're bouncing this guy and returning him repeatedly with like Crystal Shard or something. So expect people to have fun with this in Commander, and it's a decent value in Limited as well. Blade Historian, hybrid mana, red and white ×4. Attacking creatures you control have double strike. So this on its own is going to be hitting for 4. You're totally going to play this in a red-white deck. Note, though, if you're playing red or white, not both, this mana cost is actually super difficult to make happen. So in decks where it's red and white, it is like the easiest thing in the world to do. And if you have half of your deck is white mana, I mean, not impossible, but man, is it unlikely that you're going to be able to cast this if you're not playing just red-white. That may surprise some people, not when they think about it, but just at first glance, it just kind of doesn't feel that bad. But yeah, quadruple white is a big ask if you're in like, white-black, for example. So Blood Researcher, Golgari card here for 3. It's a 2/2 with Menace. Whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Again, solid upside there to a card that's slightly overcosted, but as long as you're gaining any life, that card's immediately a good value, and then after that it can get really out of hand. Blot Out the Sky, X and a white and a black to create X tapped 2/1 white black Inkling creatures, and if X is 6 or more, destroy all non-creature non-land permanents. Wow. Okay. That's a magic card right there. That is going to be a huge problem to contend with in Limited. So yeah, non-creature, non-land permanents. So you get a whole bunch of guys. They're tapped. You can potentially take out some things. I expect Commander players to have a lot of fun with this. But just in general, I mean, you're making a huge board presence. As long as you're not like behind, you're going to leap way ahead with this card. If you're not going to like die on the crackback, because they do come into play tapped. Body of Research, what a mana cost on this one. You're going to get a green and blue fractal, put X+1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of cards in your library. Sure. Yeah, no, you're going to face this down, possibly, the pre-release. This could be like a turn 6 play where you're facing down like a creature with more than 20 power and toughness. That'll be very dangerous. I'd imagine people will have a lot of fun with that. That mana cost is not the easiest thing to swing, even in blue-green. Blue-green alone, if you're just going a 2-color deck, which I suspect most people will be able to do, given that they're doing those seeded booster packs. Closing Statement, 3, a black and a white, cost 2 less during your end step. A little bit of a pun there. Destroy target creature or planeswalker you don't control, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature you control. So, yeah, great card. Totally fine to pay 5 mana. You don't have to commit to the mana during your end step, but could be worthwhile. And killing a creature and putting a +1/+1 counter, very, very strong. Cram Session, 2 mana to gain 4 life and learn. Well, I guess I can stand corrected. This is... Well, I said most, I guess. I didn't say you're going to play all of these. This card is pretty much trash. Not where you want to be. Gaining 4 life, not enough of an effect to even be a magic card. Like, just... It almost wouldn't matter if this cost 0 mana. You still wouldn't play it if all it did is gain 4 life. That you want to gain way more life than that to make it even worth considering playing the card. And the learn, I don't think, is enough to sway that. So there, we've got one card that I think is pretty trash as far as these multicolored ones. Do expect these to be higher power level than the monocolored, as I said before. Creative Outburst, 3, 2 red, 2 blue. 5 damage to any target. Look at the top 5 of your library, put 1 into your hand, the rest on the bottom in a random order, and you can pay 2 mana and discard it to create a treasure token. Interesting. It's not obvious to me what they're going for there, but I mean, point is 7 mana is a hugely powerful effect. You've got a 5 damage to anything plus a impulse, even digging deeper than impulse. Impulse is only 4 cards, so that's a very powerful effect. It's a question of whether or not you're actually going to want a 7 casting cost card. It'll depend. I mean, there's some ability to get stuff back out of your graveyard. So if that's going on, discarding that, getting a treasure, and then flashing it back from your graveyard, that's super spicy. Culling Ritual, we've got a 4 mana sorcery here. Destroy each non-land permanent with a mana value 2 or less. Add a black or green for each permanent destroyed this way. I suspect that'll see a ton of play in Commander, getting rid of all of your opponent's signets and soul rings and mana vaults and just probably netting you mana. That card's definitely going to see some play in Commander, and people are not going to be happy about it, as that is a pretty lopsided board wipe. Culmination of Studies. Interesting art there. Looks like Will and Rowan taking on some type of demon. Looks like the blood avatar, apparently, in the flavor text. Exile the top X cards from your library. For each land exiled this way, create a treasure token. For each blue card exiled this way, draw a card. And for each red card exiled this way, it does 1 damage to each opponent. So, again, I'd imagine a commander finisher. Not that there's any shortage of those once you have those type of resources. Daemogoth Titan. 11/10. Wow. Attacks or whenever it attacks or blocks, sacrifice a creature. I mean, no trample on this one, so that's a mercy for your opponent. Yeah, that's probably a somewhat balanced magic card, I suppose. Like, sacking a creature is awful. It is a big body. Eventually, you will run out of creatures, and it's not like it's going to one-shot them, so that's an interesting magic card. At rare, at least it doesn't interfere with like Pauper or anything. There's going to be a card coming up which is great for Pauper. I'm really excited about it. But yeah, this seems like a card that could backfire horribly. Yeah, and keep in mind, like, if you have a creature out and then you attack you have to, if that's a whenever trigger, so they could respond to the trigger by bouncing your creature or killing your creature, and then you still have to sack a creature. So that is a whenever trigger. So that could go horribly, horribly wrong. Daemongoth Woe Eater, another interesting mana cost here. 4 mana, 7/6. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. When you sacrifice this one, each opponent discards a card, you draw a card, and you gain 2 life. So looks like we've got some interesting options. I mean, we certainly saw a bunch of Pests generation. It doesn't feel like there's enough of it to merit this type of risk of continually sacrificing stuff. I mean, they're pushing it. I mean, these mana costs are super cheap compared to Lord of the Pit back in the day. So people that enjoyed trying to make that work back in 93, 94 probably have a lot of fun with this set. Even if it doesn't work, at least you tried to do something. Deadly Brew, 2 mana here. Each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If you sacrificed a permanent this way, you may return another permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So, not bad. Not bad, each player sacrificing. It's like an innocent blood for 1 more, but you can also get a permanent card back to your hand. You know, black-green, Pox, bringing back Wastelands. Gotta have some fun with that. Decisive Denial, green and the blue on this one for this modal spell. You're going to choose in between a creature you control fighting a creature you don't control, or countering target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. I'd imagine that'll end up seeing some play in Standard. It's interesting. Dinah Soul Steeper, a legendary Dryad Druid, a little bit of a tongue twister. 2 mana, 1/3. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So if you gain 5 life, they're only gonna let's try that again. When you gain 5 life, they lose 1 life. And you can pay 1, sack another creature, and she gets +X/+O, where that's the creature's power. So she can make use of some beefy creatures. Double Major. Copy target creature spell you control, except it isn't legendary if the spell is legendary. So this sets you up for a total blowout in constructed Magic, but for your pre-release pool, you could potentially get good value out of this, doubling your spell. Not at all what I'd want to be doing, to be honest, but if you are inclined to try and make crazy things happen, this might work out well for you. Now, in formats where counter spells are flying around all over the place, the way this type of effect works is you'd play your spell. You have to then, without passing priority, play Double Major. You're not allowed to wait to see if your opponent has a counter spell. At that point, your main spell resolves. So if I play a Tarmogoyf and I have Double Major in my hand, I can't play Tarmogoyf, look at my opponent, they say okay, and then play Double Major. That's actually not a legal play. When they say okay, me passing to them is passing priority. When they pass priority, the top effect of the stack resolves, which is putting the Tarmogoyf into play. So you have to extend yourself here. You have to put your neck out there where you play your Tarmogoyf and say holding priority, Double Major, and then if they have a counter spell, they can just counter the Goyf, which means the Double Major doesn't have a target on resolution and is now countered. So you get 2 for 1 all day with this in any reasonable format, but you can give it a go on the pre-release. It might work out. Dramatic Finale. Creature tokens you control get +1/+1. Whenever 1 or more non-token creatures you control die, create a 2/1 Inkling creature. The ability triggers only once each turn. That may be enough to really get out of control. It is non-token creatures, so you're not going to upgrade your Pests to Inklings and then have infinite Inklings. But, I mean, that's an interesting card. Difficult to evaluate because it doesn't do a whole lot on its own. Actually, it doesn't do anything on its own. You need creatures to die or you need creatures to pump. But I could be persuaded to play that if I was playing black-white, potentially. Elemental Expressionist. 4 hybrid blue and red mana for a 4/4, so we're off to a really good start here. See, this is the difference. Like, I'd rather have a 4/4 tacked on to my goofiness than just a card that doesn't do anything at all if I've got the choice between them. So this Magecraft is let's see, choose target creature you control. Until end of turn, it gains, if this creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere. And whenever you exile this creature, put a 4/4 blue elemental token into the battlefield. So here, instead of your creature turning into a 2/1, it's turning into a 4/4, and you've got a 4/4 body. So I would much prefer this over the black-white card that we just looked at, because at least worst case scenario, this will be a body, and when it does work out, you know, you play a pump spell or some type of trick, and you can convert your garbage creature into a 4/4, which is better than a 2/1 anyway. So I actually like this a lot more than the previous one. Elemental Masterpiece, 7 mana is a lot. Create 2 4/4 elementals, and you can also pay the 2 and discard it to create a treasure token. It seems like they're really trying to give you options to be casting stuff from the graveyard. We'll see if there's enough stuff to really justify that. We have a lesson here in Elemental Summoning, 5 mana for a 4/4, which is overcosted by modern standards, but you can definitely win games of Magic with that. Plus, it's easy to get into your hand with all of those lessons. Eureka Moment, 4 casting cost, instant to draw 2, and you can put a land from your hand into the battlefield. A little bit of a Euro-esque effect here at instant speed, which is nice. Exhilarating Elocution, 4 mana sorcery. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. So you've got your one anointed one standing up, inspiring everybody else, and I mean, that's a reasonable breakthrough card. Typically, you want those to be like instant speed, so when you swing and they don't block, they're just dead. The way this might play out is you play this and then swing, and your opponent has to make some bad blocks, but then they're still around to potentially top deck a board wipe. Expressive Iteration. Oh, that was nice. Just got to help one of my favorite customers there. So yeah, Expressive Iteration at 2 mana. We got some value here. You're going to look at the top 3 of your library, put 1 into your hand, 1 on the bottom, and then you exile 1, and you can play the exiled card this turn. So very realistic that you're going to be able to exile a land and actually play that. Yeah, that seems strong. I mean, that's for 2 mana. I mean, not exactly what you want to be doing in Limited, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's a core card of Standard moving forward, you know, while it's legal. Fractal Summoning, a new lesson. We've got X and 2 to create a fractal, so we're going to be able to, you know, pay 6 to get a 4/4. Not super good, but again, those lessons are kind of priced in to the fact that you have access to them, and you don't have to clutter your deck with the lessons. Fracture, 2 mana to destroy target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker. Interesting. That is a surprising printing. A lot of versatility there, and I wouldn't be surprised if that sees constructed play. Probably not even. Funny thing is, depending on the set, that might not be good enough to actually play in your sealed pool, even though it'll be like good in constructed. It's very possible your opponent's not going to have any of those card types, since it is entirely focused on creatures. Now here, this 3/4 flyer for 4. You could stop there and it'd have a thumbs up. On top of it, when it enters the battlefield, you get a treasure, and artifacts you control have tap to add 1 mana of any mana. Spend this only to cast an instant or sorcery. So you're going to get a basically a mox that can be used for your instants and sorceries for the rest of the game, or you can cash it out at some other point. I mean, that is a solid Magic card, which is going to help out any blue-red deck this pre-release. Golden Ratio. Just looking at the art, trying to understand what they're going for there. That's kind of like the fractals with the rectangles kind of nested within each other. It kind of looks like that's what they're going for. Yeah, I guess. All right. Maybe the perspective is just making it not as obvious for me. Draw a card for each different power among creatures you control. So if you have a 1, 2, 3, 4 power creature, that'd be 4 cards. Probably going to draw a couple of cards off of this pretty easily if you have your 2 power creatures and then maybe a larger creature. Again, card drawing is not generally what I'm looking to do with the pre-release. This is a tough to cast card at 7 mana. That's a lot to cast, and you're going to exchange your hand and your graveyard and then exile Harness Infinity. That does feel, I could tell, I was like, that looks like Seb McKinnon art. It is indeed. What a master he is. Just love seeing his work, and I mean, seems like it's improving. I know he's already great, but it does feel to me like he is continuing to improve. The sense of motion in this card is just awesome. Not the type of thing you're going to want to do at the pre-release, but certainly Commander players will have fun with that. Hofri Ghostforge. Spirits you control have +1/+1, trample, and haste. Decent stats here. We got a 4/5 for 5. That is not an embarrassment. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you exile it. And if you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a spirit in addition to other types, and has, when this creature leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to your graveyard. Wow. Okay. I mean, that's going to be a pain to deal with. So, you're actually upgrading your creatures when they die, because they're becoming spirits. Yikes. Yeah, that card's got some power to it. That is, I mean, you're certainly playing that in your pre-release pool if you're red-white. Humiliate. I mean, you might go red-white for that card. I mean, you could have a flyer fearlessly attacking. If they trade, then your guy just comes back even bigger. I mean, all of the removals is half as good. Unfortunately, he's just going to bite it first, but not all the removal in the format kills him with 5 toughness, so... him or her, I didn't really notice. I don't know. I think female dwarves might have beards. I'm not sure if they do in Magic. Humiliate. A white and a black. Target opponent reveals their hand. You can choose a non-land card from it. That player discards the card, and you put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. So, I mean, yeah, not generally what I want to be doing. 2 mana Thoughtseize effects. You pump a creature. Kind of mediocre. I'm much more concerned about the board than I am with the things in their hand. Infuse with Vitality. 2 mana until end of turn. Target creature gains Death Touch, and when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. You gain 2 life. Another supernatural stamina style effect. Unfortunately, this is 2 mana, so we've already got our full of them for Zubera Storm, which is a very fun deck, but if we ever need more, we do have the option at 6. I think we actually have an enchantment one we could run as well. There's no shortage. 8's probably enough. What we need is more blue Zuberas. Inkling Summoning. It's a bit of a tongue twister there. 3 mana. You just get the 2/1 flying Inkling, which we're seeing so much of, and that is a sorcery. Or a lesson, I meant to say. Kasmina, Enigma Sage. So people were initially a little panicked, probably from the trauma of Oko. They really didn't like how Oko impacted Legacy, and they're seeing another Simic Planeswalker. We're super concerned about it. Now this one, each other Planeswalker you control has the loyalty abilities of Kasmina, so now your Narsets are going to be able to plus up. Any of the War of the Spark Planeswalkers that didn't have an easy way for them to add loyalty counters now have that ability. Plus, you can make a lot of fractals, which can have some synergy with other cards in the set. So, I mean, I don't think it's actually going to be nearly as good as people were thinking, but it's still almost certainly an auto-include in Super Friends. So, Killian Ink Duelist. Lifelink 2/2 for 2 with Menace and spells that target a creature. Spells you cast that target a creature cost 2 less to cast. Wow. So this card's fantastic, and it's an uncommon. So very, very good card here. Lifelink, Menace. It's going to be difficult to block. So it's a creature with evasion that's actually gaining life, which is a quasi form of creature removal. So it's not correct to think about it as creature removal per se, but if they're attacking you with a 2/2 flyer in the air and you're swinging with this on the ground and gaining 2 life each turn, you are to an extent negating the effect of that other creature. So certainly not as good as something that, say, taps to kill a creature, but, you know, this is a lot tacked on to a 2-mana card. So this guy, huge thumbs up. I think this is one of the better cards that we've seen so far for pre-release pools. Another 2/2 for 2 here. This one has Magecraft, which is going to be spirits you control gain tap. This creature does 1 damage to each opponent. I mean, that's cute. It could actually be quite good depending on the type of deck. I actually think this type of card would be super dangerous in draft if you're able to give spirits just the ability to all end step, just turn sideways, do like 5 damage, and then just do that for a few turns in a row after creating a standstill. I mean, that could be a very potent strategy that doesn't need to use the combat step to win. Lorehold Command. Got a whole bunch of new commands in this set. This one costs 5, so probably not going to be seeing constructed play in something like Legacy, but we're going to get a 3/2 body, or give all your creatures +1/+0 and indestructible and haste till end of turn, or you're going to Lightning Helix, so 3 damage to any target, and target player gains 3, so not quite Lightning Helix. You get to choose who gains the 3, and then sack a permanent, then draw 2 cards. So you're choosing 2 of those modes at 5 mana. It's a lot. It's a lot of text. I'd imagine most of the time you're going to be getting a 3/2 body and killing a creature while gaining life. Some of the times you're going to be winning the game with this card by plussing everything and then doing 3 damage to finish off your opponent. Either way, this card is going to be dangerous and solid for your pre-release pool. You're definitely playing it if you're in red-white. No doubt about that. Lorehold Excavation. At 2 mana, we've got an enchantment at the beginning of your mill. Oh, sorry, we do these in one take. At the beginning of your end step, mill a card. If a land was milled this way, you gain 1 life. Otherwise, it does 1 damage to each opponent, and you can pay 5 to exile a creature card from your graveyard to create a tapped 3/2 spirit. Difficult to evaluate here. So this creates a little bit of inevitability and a little bit of an engine, but it doesn't really do anything on its own. I think red-white's probably going to end up being a pretty solid, aggressive deck, so I don't anticipate this seeing play in your pre-release pool. Maybe if you're up against just like a really grindy control deck, maybe you're happy to have that, but the 1 damage at a time is also not an amazing clock. Not loving it. Lorehold Pledyrmate, 3 mana 2/2 with first strike, and the Magecraft there is going to give it +1/+0. Solid enough. Dangerous to block. Kind of functions as a form of evasion there. Your opponent's likely going to be cautious throwing something in front of that, as literally any instant or sorcery might make a block go from a trade to just a trouncing. Maelstrom Muse, 4 mana, 2/4 flyer, and whenever it attacks, the next instant or sorcery you cast this turn costs X less to cast, where X is his power as this ability resolves. So you're going to swing, and then your spells are going to cost 2 less. If you somehow pump this guy up, you can get even more of a mana ramp. A little bit of a trap, not really where I want to be. I mean, I'm not going to be embarrassed to sleeve this card up, but it's really not ideal. It does have a big backside, so there is that. At 4 mana, I really do like to have 3 power in my flyers when we're paying that much. But you take what you can get. It depends on the set. Magma Opus, they do love puns. God help them. 8 mana. Again, we've got that discarding to create a treasure token tacked on the end here. But the main effect here is 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. And then you tap 2 target permanents and create a 4/4 elemental, and you draw 2 cards. So a lot of things going on here, and that card's looking to be played from your graveyard is, I think, what they're looking to do, is kind of recur that without paying its mana cost. Make Your Mark, 1 mana, combat trick here. Target creature gets +1/+0 till end of turn, and when that creature dies, create a 3/2 spirit creature token. I like this type of combat trick. I do. If you can take a 2-drop and trade it up with a 3-drop and get a 3/2 for 1 mana, I'm going to be happy with that line. Manifestation Sage, 4 casting costs. Again, super castable in blue-green. Not really castable unless you're, mono green otherwise, or mono blue. You're going to get a Fractal token where X is the number of cards in your hand. So you're going to get a 2/2 body and, probably, on turn 4, you could easily have like 5 cards left in hand. Wow. Yeah, I'm not complaining about that at all, especially if we have a way of recurring this effect. That could be very solid. I expect people will have some fun with that in Commander as well. Molder and Carrick, Lifelink, Trample, 3/3 for 4. I mean, that's going to be a fairly solid card. The Lifelink and Trample pushing through damage and gaining life. Lifelink, just in general, is one of the few ways that life gain is good in Magic. Usually a card that just gains life is just trash. But if it can also win the game, if it can also trade with other things and gain life, now that's so much more value rather than just changing the number. Mortality Spear, 4 casting costs, and you're going to destroy target non-land permanent. Plus, it costs 2 less if you gained life this turn. So that's a pretty excellent card right there. Yeah, surprisingly good card. Glad if they had made this a common, this would be gross in Pauper. There are a bunch of boon lands that just let you gain a life when they enter the battlefield, and control decks would have a field day with this. Needlethorn Drake, the 2 casting cost, flying, Death Touch. Yeah, that's not where I want to be with the 1/1. I mean, if this was a 2/1 flyer, sign me up, but just chipping in for 1 each turn, I'm not happy about that. This guy, we've got a 5 casting cost, Oggyar Battleseer, haste, and it can tap to scry 1, so it can show up and start immediately going to battle, or sit back and immediately start scrying and digging for answers. So kind of no matter what the board state is, there's a good chance this guy is going to be a welcome play for 5 mana. Olin Shieldmage, 5 casting cost flyer with Ward 3. Ward pay 3 life, sorry. So difficult to remove. And yeah, not bad. Not bad. Again, 5 mana. I mean, it looks like you're just going to take what you can get in this set. Historically, something like Sarah Angel is phenomenal at 5 mana, like a 4/4, like with Vigilance. I mean, that card is like legit here. I mean, this is fine. I mean, you're playing it if you're going black-white. You're just, hopefully not comparing it to previous formats. Oh, look at these pests. How adorable. What a ridiculous thing to do to such a vile creature to make it look so cute. This is going to get 2 pests, and it's a lesson. And, of course, pests, as we've learned, are going to gain you a life when they die. Lesson. For the most part, most of these lessons don't look like you're happy to sleeve them up. You really want them in your sideboard to be able to find them as you learn. Most of them are just like not quite good enough to be played. Though that one, yeah, that one's not actually. All right, Practical Research, 5 casting costs, instant, draw 4, then discard 2, unless you discard an instant or sorcery card. Wow. So you're going to draw 4 and then discard an instant or sorcery quite often. I mean, that's not terrible. It's not great. I don't think it's great. I mean, 5's a lot. 5 is a lot. It's good that it's not 4 mana. 4 mana would actually be like super spicy for this card. That would have me contemplating like Eternal formats. Fact or Fiction, Gifts Ungiven. Like this is some serious card draw. Prismari Apprentice, 2 mana for a 2/2. I like it. And here we go. Magecraft. If the spell has a mana value... Oh, Magecraft makes it so he can't be blocked this turn. Nice. If that spell has mana value 5 or greater, he gets a +1/+1 counter. I mean, that's not bad at all. This guy's going to push through damage, and you definitely want to be contesting the board early. So you're playing that for sure in your pre-release pool if you're red-blue. Prismari Command. I think this card may end up seeing play in Legacy. 1, a red, and a blue. You can do 2 damage to any target, and you can destroy an artifact. That is mostly what Kolaghan's Command's all about. So I think right off the bat, like the fact that it can pitch to force makes this very interesting. The other things it does here is creating a treasure token, or target player draws 2 cards and discards 2 cards. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see some type of deck that runs Punishing Fire, like a value deck that also runs this. Would be super happy to discard things like Punishing Fire, or maybe even like, I won't go so far as to say a Loam-esque type thing, but bottom line is mostly you want to destroy an artifact and a creature. So Death and Taxes, blowing up an equipment or an Aether Vial and killing one of their guys. Playing against a kind of mid-rangey control deck, blow up their Baleful Strix because it's an artifact, and kill their Snapcaster or whatever. There's a lot of decks where you're getting a 2-for-1 out of this, and it's really, really strong. Kolaghan's Command does discard a lot, especially at instant speed when they draw. But overall, I think the 2 main modes are there. You're losing the discard, you're losing the returning Snapcaster, which is like the ultimate value plan. But, this is blue. So that's a really interesting trade-off. We'll see what players actually come down with. I'm sure people will test this, and time will tell exactly how much value there is in upping the blue count, which is a struggle for like modern control decks, is making sure you have enough blue cards, not only for Force of Will now, but remember, Force and Negation as well. Prismari Pledyrmate, 2 casting cost, 3/3 with Defender. Magecraft is going to get rid of its Defender. Yeah, I probably don't play this. I don't know. It really depends on the amount of instants and sorceries. It's just you probably don't have that many. So here's the thing. In your pre-release pool, you've got probably 23 cards, aside from your mana base. If you're running 17 lands, maybe you run 18, so 22 to 23. When you're running 24, 16 lands, you're going to get land screwed sometimes, but sometimes that's worth the risk. But let's say you got 23 cards. I mean, how many of them are instants and sorceries? You want to have at least 12 to 14 creatures, possibly more. So it just seems like you don't have a ton of instants and sorceries. Many decks won't be able to win with this alone, even if they had every instant or sorcery in their hand. Like maybe you're running 6 in your deck, and you literally can only do 18 damage with this guy on his own. So I do like my creatures to be able to push through and win. It seems like this one's not actually going to be where you want to be. Maybe I'm wrong. It is a lot of value. I mean, a 3/3 for 2 in limited in general is good. It's not like in constructed where you get like wild Nacatls and stuff, like these 1 casting costs 3 power creatures like Delver of Secrets. We're talking about a pre-release pool, so if you can get a 3/3 for 2, you're doing really, really well. But this drawback may be too large to feel good about sleeving that up. Quandrix Apprentice. Another 2 for 2, and the Magecraft on this one is you can reveal, look at the top 3 cards of your library, and you can reveal a land from among them, put it into your hand, and put the rest onto the bottom. So, yeah, I'd be very, very happy to be sleeving this card up. Potentially, I mean, your mana ratio is going to be so high that it's very often that you're going to hit, and sometimes that'll actually be mana fixing as well. Quandrix Command, a 3 casting cost command here. You're going to choose to return target creature or planeswalker to its owner's hand, counter target artifact or enchantment spell, put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature, or target player shuffles up to 3 target cards from their graveyard into their library. A lot of interesting modes. I think you'll play this in your pre-release pool for sure. Bouncing their creature and pumping your guy is really, really strong. It is nice to have some answers to some of the more ridiculous things that might happen. And the shuffle effect is probably one of the lesser used modes here. But overall, I don't think it's as exciting as the Prismari command. Quandrix Cultivator. At 4 mana, we have a 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a basic forest or island, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So I'm liking this one. A little bit of mana fixing, a little bit of speed. Probably ends up seeing some play in certain types of commander decks that are looking for landfalls and flickering things in and out. And at uncommon, he's not going to be able to be played in Pauper, but that's probably a good thing. That type of repeated ramp would get old pretty fast. Quandrix Pledyrmate. It's also really slow, just like repeatedly digging into your deck. Like the physical time it would take to do that. Quandrix Pledyrmate, 3 casting cost 2/2, and this guy gets a +1/+1 counter with Magecraft, so another infinite damage card with Chain of Smog. Quintorius Field Historian, this Elephant Cleric, gives spirits you control +1/+0, and whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you get a 3/2 white creature token. 5 casting cost 2/4, kind of outside the realm of constructed playable. Doesn't feel great in limited unless you have some way of removing cards from your graveyard. I mean, yeah, stuff like Scavenging Ooze, just paying 1 to get a 3/2. It's an awful lot to set up. 5 mana is just a lot. I mean, for casting 5 mana spells, things actually have to come together pretty well. Radiant Scrollwielder, 4 casting cost 2/4. Instants and sorceries you control have lifelink, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. You may cast it this turn. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile instead. I mean, at least the combo pieces here work. So we've got the Prismari cards. So if you're going Jeskai, red, white, blue, then you can potentially be bombing some like really big instants and sorceries. So that's, I mean, good luck if you go for it. It would be hilarious. Reconstruct History. We've got 4 mana here to return up to 1 target artifact card, 1 target enchantment, 1 target instant, up to 1 target sorcery, up to 1 target planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand, and then you exile this. So this is returning a ton of stuff from your graveyard to your hand. Not generally what you want to be doing in limited, but some commander decks may want that option for like super long grindy games, though doesn't overwhelm me. By the time you're doing that, you may want to go with some type of like infinite combo. Vigilance and Menace on this 4/4. Loving this one. Love it. 5 casting costs, 4/4. Vigilance. Turn it sideways. But not actually turn it sideways. Attack with it. It doesn't turn sideways. It just gets in there and can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures, which sets up all sorts of blowout plays with your creature removal. They could throw a couple of 3/3s in front of this and you kill one of them, and it's just bloodshed. Returned Pasicaller, 6 casting cost, 4/2 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, return target spirit, instant, or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. A little bit more than you want to spend on that effect, but I mean, probably totally fine. Rip Apart, 2 mana here to do 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy an artifact or enchantment. Wow. Wow. All right. I mean, a Braid is a red card that sees a lot of play. That just does 3 damage to a creature and then can also destroy an artifact. So those are your choices on that. By adding in white to the mana cost, we can now target a planeswalker or an enchantment. I would actually not be surprised if this is an eternal playable card. That looks really good. Oh, it's a sorcery. Got me. Yeah, got me. If it was an instant, so we add white and a sorcery, that actually does make it a lot worse. That's too bad. If they made that white, I think that's totally an eternal playable card. If they made that a instant, I should say. Rise of Extus, 6 mana sorcery. Exile target creature. Exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery from your graveyard. And learn. Oh, from a graveyard. Gotcha. So we're going to get rid of their creature for 6 mana, possibly get rid of a instant or sorcery from their graveyard and learn. And, I mean, you could also exile it from your graveyard. There's some cards that care about getting stuff out of your graveyard and give you 3/2s for your trouble. But again, this isn't even a lesson. I was going to say as a lesson, it's fine that it costs so much more, but oof, yeah, this is a little rough. 6 mana. Man, but it does learn. I don't know. Hopefully you have better removal than this. That's really, really slow for sorcery speed. Yikes. Rutha, Mercurial Artist. Orc Shaman, you can pay 2 and return it to your hand. To copy, target instant or sorcery spell. You may now choose new targets for the copy. I mean, that's tempting. That is tempting. That is some silly stuff. Getting double use out of your removal spells will quickly bury your opponent, getting rid of their best creatures. Probably too cute to be attempting, but, I mean, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if you're trying to take it easy on someone. Though just keep in mind, if you're trying to take it easy on someone and it comes together, it's not going to feel like you're taking it easy on them. You're just going to be Hulk smashing them with doubling up all your spells. So Rushed Rebirth, 2 casting cost instant here. You choose a creature. When that creature dies, search your library for a creature with lesser mana value, put it into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So, yep, not immediately thinking up the combo. I mean, this isn't like the Bioform or whatever it was from War of the Spark. That's just obvious. This a little bit tougher to pull together here. When it dies this turn, yeah, not exactly what I want to be doing. Trying to keep mana open for when I'm getting destroyed to get something worse. Shadewing Laureate. 3 casting cost, 2/2 flyer. All right. Whenever another creature you control with flying dies, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So this card seems pretty great. I was thinking it was a vampire for a second. It's a human warlock, so it doesn't necessarily fit flavor-wise into a lot of commander decks, but it will certainly fit in. And definitely where you want to be with your pre-release pool as well. Here we go, another Elder Dragon, and that's some fun art. I like the composition of this. Flying Double Strike. Yikes. So 2/5 to begin with, hitting for 4 a turn, but that escalates very quickly. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you can choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. And target player gets a 2/1 flyer. Target player draws a card and loses a card. And target player puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature they control. So kind of a super friendly type thing. Yeah, all of those things are things that you want happening on your side of the board. So I guess good for partner play in Commander. If you're teaming up with somebody, you can help them out. Give them some extra cards or some extra bodies. Yeah, because they're all target player. Okay, yeah. No way around that with how it's worded. Checking to see if it was like an Esper Charm situation where not all the modes target. Silverquill Apprentice, 2 mana, 2/2, and the Magecraft on this one is going to give a creature +1/+0 till end of turn. So we have another infinite damage card with Chain of Smog. Silverquill Command, 4 casting cost. This one is going to give wings and +3/+3 to a creature. Very, very dangerous and limited. Return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life, and target opponent sacrifices a creature. So lots of useful modes there. I mean, certainly making your opponent sack a creature and giving a huge creature wings, definitely going to change the dynamic of the game. And drawing a card is, a nice option to have on these mode cards where you can at least cycle them and replace themselves. You can get a lot of value out of it that way. Silverquill Pledyrmate. This one has a Magecraft of giving the creature flying or lifelink till end of turn. That one's a little less exciting. I mean, 3/1 for 3 trades down with literally everything, including garbage cards that only cost 1 mana. I mean, if you can continually give it flying, that's awesome. But as I said, I'm pretty skeptical of the ability to do that. Silverquill Silencer, 2 casting costs, 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, choose a non-land card. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with the chosen name, so you name the card, and then whenever they play a card that has the name, they lose 3 life and you draw a card. So not quite a meddling mage, but a more aggressive slant to it, a 3/2 for 2. Obviously, you're playing this if you're in black-white, and you can always name some of the better cards in their deck, possibly the removal spells if they have multiples, or if they have a bomb, something that you could potentially get them low enough that, you know, you can win if they're playing like their Elder Dragon, and then hopefully that'll lower them where you can just swarm past it in just one big strike. So, interesting card. I mostly just like it for the stat line. I would not be impressed with this card if it was just a 2/2 for 2. It would be fine, but this is like actually a very interesting card, given that it's one of the most aggressive costed cards that we've seen in terms of power to mana. Spectacle Mage, 3 casting cost, 2/2 with flying. Nice. Instant and sorcery spells you cast with mana value 5 or greater cost 1 less. That's welcome as well. We'll take that. Spirit Summoning, 3 casting cost to create a 3/2 spirit. And, you know, this is a lesson. It's not something you actually want in your deck, but something that you'll be happy to get access to at the right time. Spiteful Squad, 4 casting costs, 0/0 with Death Touch, but it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And when it dies, you get to put those counters onto target creature you control. I mean, that's all the counters as well. So if you do stockpile counters on this, they will go elsewhere. Not really loving this one. Not really loving it. Just 2 power for 4 is not super exciting. The Death Touch is, I mean, on a ground creature. Very often these games kind of turn into getting in there in the air or with evasion. So square up. Target creature has base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn. Interesting combat trick. Kind of like giving a creature +2/+2 for 2 if it's a smaller creature. Yeah. Stonebound Mentor, 3 casting costs, 3/3. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, scry 1. Definitely playing that if you're in red-white. Solid stats and a nice little upside of potentially scrying a few times a game. Tanner's Ear Quandrix, 5 casting costs, 4/4 flying trample. Excellent start here. When it enters the battlefield, double the number of +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. That is... I'll mention a little bit more of that. Let's see what else it does. And whenever it attacks, you may have base power and toughness of other creatures you control become equal to Tanzir's power and toughness until end of turn. So this is bananas. Like, this is going to turn all of your incidental tokens into 4/4s. It's going to take your smaller creatures that have been sitting there in a standstill and bump those up. All your flyers are now 4 power. So this card's just freaking insane for limited in my estimation. And keep in mind, with the way that worded first clause is, that wasn't English, with the way that first clause is worded, when he enters the battlefield, double the number of +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. It doesn't say target creature with +1/+1 counters on it. So they don't have to have counters on it already. You can potentially do something in response to this trigger and have it get out of control as well. So that is interesting. So yeah, like if you had something that says when a creature enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on creatures you control, then he could enter and you'd have 2 ETBs and you can stack them however you want. Something like a Carthage Crusade or something. So teach by example here. 2 casting cost instant. At common, wow, when you cast the next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You choose new copies for the target. That's crazy that they put... So that's like kind of a fork or a reverberate at common when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn. That is funny. So you got to commit the mana ahead of time, which is really fine. You can't bounce stuff back. That's probably the biggest thing, right? Because like twin cast type effects or fork effects, like when you go to counter my spell, I can use a fork to fork the counter spell to counter the original counter. So this doesn't do that. This is just doubling up on whatever instant or sorcery you're going to play. And I think people will have fun with that. That's actually it's a fun effect. It's probably not what you want to be doing in your pre-release, just as a one-time use, but 10 the Pests, 2 mana as an additional cost, sack a creature, and you create X pests where let's see, X is the creature's power. So, I mean, that's potentially a pretty interesting response to removal. Yeah, I think Commander players will have fun with that. Not really the type of thing I want to sleeve up for a pre-release weekend, but that's an interesting card. Thrilling Discovery, 2 mana, you gain 2 life. You may discard 2 cards. You may then discard 2 cards. If you do, draw 3. So we've got, what is it, Cathartic Reunion. So taking the colorless, turning it into white, and gaining 2 life off of it. I mean, I feel like Cathartic Reunion actually sees play, so this card could be fine. Again, not really where I want to be in a pre-release. Could see some play in draft. If there's some archetypes that really care about getting stuff into the graveyard, there could be some utility for that in draft. We'll see. Though, I mean, I just don't anticipate drafting anytime soon. We can at least do pre-releases over the internet. We can just do the sealed decks, but a draft, like, you actually need to be in the room to pass cards to people, along with COVID. Vanishing Verse, 2 mana, exile target monocolored permanent. Target monocolored permanent. So not colorless and not multicolored, so you're not able to go after lands unless they are a single color. So like Dryad Arbor, you can KO. But that's an interesting Magic card. I'd expect people are going to play the heck out of that. Velomachus Lorehold, another Elder Dragon. This one, 7 casting cost, 5/5. This with flying, vigilance, and haste. That is a dangerous combination of abilities there. And whenever he attacks, you look at the top 7 of your library. You can cast an instant or sorcery with mana value less than or equal to his power from among them without paying the mana cost, and you put the rest on the bottom in any order. That's a tremendously powerful Magic card. Swinging for 5 each turn, being able to block for 5 if you choose. You might not even want to risk him in combat. He's so valuable, as each turn, not only is he pushing through another 5 damage, but he's getting an instant or sorcery out of your deck. Wow. Yeah, that guy's a reason to go red-white. Even though it's 7 mana, that is a lot. I actually like my bombs at like 6 mana, but I would totally go red-white with the expectation of casting this guy on turn 7 and just winning the game because of him. Venerable Warsinger, 3 casting costs, 3/3, Vigilance, Trample. Really nice there. Great value so far. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of damage that it dealt to that player. Wow, that card's great for limited. Great for limited. Left unchecked is just going to completely outpace your opponent, totally overrun the game. That card is the real deal for a pre-release weekend. Witherbloom Apprentice, 2 casting cost, 2/2. Magecraft on this one also goes infinite with Chain of Smog. Opponent loses 1 life, you gain 1 life. So not bad at all. I mean, totally solid 2-drop. That life swing, very, very welcome in a aggro deck, or really in any type of deck. Witherbloom Command, here we go. 2 mana sorcery command. This time our 4 modes are milling a player, and you can return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. You can also, like a life from the loam, but you can mill them if you choose. Destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. So an Abrupt Decay, slightly smaller. Target creature gets -3, -1, or target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Very interesting options crammed into a 2 mana card. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of utility there. I don't know that that's better than some of the existing options. I don't think it is better than the existing options for like Legacy, but like that's a really interesting card. And I love the fact that you are able to get value out of this. So for only 2 mana, you're able to get a land from your graveyard back to your hand if you want. So being able to like kill a creature and kind of draw a card for 2 mana, I mean, it's a good value. You can kill 2 creatures for 2 mana as well. Also a good value. So yeah, that's an interesting card. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even better than I'm thinking. Witherbloom Pledyrmate, 5 mana, 5/5. That is a big chungus Whenever your Magecraft is going to be gaining a life. So he's already aggressively costed enough, but you're going to be able to stabilize and kind of gain some life and kind of outrace your opponent, swinging for 5 at a time and potentially staying outside of lethal by playing some instants or sorceries. It's got to be the end here. Zimone, Quandrix Prodigy. Let's see here. You can pay 1 and you can put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, or you can pay 4 to draw a card. If you control 8 or more lands, you can draw 2 instead. All right. Yeah. I mean, I think people are going to play that for sure. Yeah, people will definitely play that in Commander. Not really where you want to be in Constructed. The 1-2 is just not much in the way of power. But definitely see people playing that in Commander, drawing cards or just like continuing to land ramp is one of the more fun ways to ramp, getting just tons and tons of lands into play, as long as your group's not playing with Armageddons. So that is it for all the gold cards. There were a lot of them, and you can check out the rest of the videos. We'll have a link coming up. That is all for this one, but don't worry, there is a lot more. You can check out our older videos, and we're always putting out new videos from ELD's Time Vault Games in Bellingham, Massachusetts. If you want to help the channel, of course, you can like, subscribe, share, tap that notification bell so you can know the next time our new videos come out. Thanks for watching.